Mrs. Susan Holmes, do you admit that you manipulated your late husband into signing over his entire $3.2 million estate to you, effectively disinheriting his only son? My parents' attorney's voice rang with confidence through the courtroom. I sat frozen in the gallery, watching my grandmother, a 72-year-old woman in a simple navy dress, silver hair pulled back, hands folded calmly in her lap, say nothing. My mother, Patricia, smirked from the plaintiff's table. My father, Richard, stood with his arms crossed, looking at Grandma like she was dirt on his shoe. The same look I'd seen for 2 years, ever since Grandpa Lucas died, and they abandoned her like yesterday's trash. "That old woman thought she was so clever," Mom whispered loud enough for me to hear. "Soon everything will be ours." But when Judge Catherine Morrison, an imposing black woman in her 60s with sharp eyes behind gold-rimmed glasses, spoke, her voice cut through the room like ice. "I think this court needs to clarify a few things before we proceed." She nodded to my grandmother's attorney, James Chen, a distinguished Asian man in his 50s wearing an impeccable gray suit. He opened his leather briefcase and pulled out a thick file. Mom's smirk started to freeze. If you're watching this video, hit subscribe right now, because what was revealed in the next few minutes made my parents scream, "No fucking way!" And I, Emily Holmes, 28 years old, finally understood why my grandmother had endured 2 years of humiliation in silence. Let me start from the beginning. My name is Emily Holmes. I'm a 4th grade teacher in Portland, Oregon. I grew up thinking we were a normal middle-class family. Dad worked in sales management. Mom was an accountant. We lived in a 2-story house with a 30-year mortgage, 2 sedans in the garage, and annual beach vacations. My grandparents, Lucas and Susan Holmes, lived 15 minutes away. Grandpa was a carpenter his whole life, Grandma a homemaker. They had a small house in the suburbs with a vegetable garden out back and an old pickup truck. I remember weekend afternoons watching Grandpa work in his woodshop while Grandma made chocolate chip cookies. But to my parents, my grandparents were just obligations. Every Thanksgiving and Christmas, Mom complained, "Do we have to go to your parents' house again? Same thing every year. Tiny house, cheap food." Dad would grunt, "They're my parents, Patricia. We have to go." But have to didn't mean want to. I didn't notice much when I was younger. Only as I got older did I realize my parents only visited when absolutely necessary. Mandatory holidays, when they needed Grandpa to fix furniture for free, or when they needed babysitting so they could travel. And I started hearing things. "Your parents have nothing, Richard. We'll be stuck taking care of them when they're older. I hope they at least bought life insurance to offset the costs. If we're lucky, that house might sell for a couple $100,000. What a waste." I was 26, 2 years into teaching, still paying student loans, but hearing those words made me sick. Then in November 2022, Grandpa had a stroke. That's when everything shattered. He was rushed to Providence Portland Medical Center at 3 a.m. Grandma called Dad, voice shaking. "Richard, your father had a stroke. He's in ICU. Can you come?" Dad looked at the clock and growled, "It's 3 a.m., Mom. I have work tomorrow. I'll come this afternoon." "But the doctor said..." "Afternoon, Mom. I need sleep." I heard the conversation from my room. My chest tightened. I threw on clothes and drove to the hospital alone. Grandma sat hunched outside ICU, eyes red and swollen, hair disheveled. When she saw me, she collapsed into my arms, sobbing. "Emily, I don't think he's going to make it." "Don't say that, Grandma. He's strong." I held her tight, but we both knew better. He was 74, had a history of heart disease, and the stroke was severe. My parents showed up at 6 p.m. Mom wore her work suit, Prada bag still on her shoulder, looking annoyed. Traffic was a nightmare. Had to reschedule an important meeting. Dad peered through the ICU window at Grandpa lying motionless with tubes and monitors, then shook his head. "Doesn't look good." "What do you think about a DNR, do not resuscitate?" Mom asked Grandma clinically. Grandma flinched. "What?" "A DNR, Mom. If Dad's heart stops, they won't do CPR. Let him pass peacefully instead of prolonging the suffering." "What are you saying, Patricia?" Grandma stared at her daughter-in-law in disbelief. "He's still alive!" "You need to be realistic. Look at these hospital bills. ICU costs nearly $10,000 a day. Medicare only covers part of it. Have you thought about that?" I shot to my feet. "Mom, this is Grandpa, not a line item." "Emily, be quiet," Dad snapped. "This is adult business." Mom looked at me coldly. "You're young. You don't understand life yet. This family needs to be practical. We can't let a 74-year-old man drain all our savings." "Our savings?" I couldn't believe my ears. This is Grandma's money, not yours. No one listened. Grandpa stayed in the hospital for 3 weeks. 3 weeks where Grandma sat by his bedside every day, dawn to dusk. She slept in the hard vinyl chair, ate hospital cafeteria food, held his hand, and talked to him even though he couldn't respond. My parents? They visited 3 times. Each visit lasted 15 minutes, asking doctors about prognosis and financial planning. I came every evening after work. I brought Grandma home-cooked meals, sat with her, read books to Grandpa. The doctor said coma patients could hear. One night, just me and Grandma, she squeezed my hand. "Emily, honey, I'm so grateful for you. You're the only grandchild who visits." "Don't say that, Grandma. It's what I should do." "No, it's not. You could stay away, like your parents." Her voice was sad. "I know what they want. They think we have money hidden somewhere." "Grandma, they don't know, Emily. They think we're poor. Maybe it's better that way." I didn't understand then, but I would. Very soon, Grandpa passed on a December morning when Portland's first snow blanketed the city. Grandma was with him until the end. I arrived just in time, holding his other hand. My parents? They were in Hawaii on a Christmas vacation booked 6 months earlier. "We can't cancel," Mom said over the phone. "Non-refundable. And anyway, Dad's not conscious. He won't know if we're there or not." I hung up without responding. I was too angry to speak. The funeral was December 20th at a small chapel. About 30 people came. Carpenters who'd worked with Grandpa, neighbors, church friends. My parents returned from Hawaii with tans, wearing black but still sporting souvenir bracelets from their trip. Mom cried dramatically in front of everyone, hugging Grandma. "Mom, I'm so sorry. Dad was a wonderful man." But after the funeral, in the parking lot, I overheard them. "So what do we do with Mom now?" Mom asked. "She's got Social Security and Dad's small pension. Probably enough to live on," Dad replied. "What about the house? We need to sell it immediately to cover hospital bills. The medical debt is over $80,000, Richard." "I know. I'll talk to a lawyer. We're the legal heirs. Mom will get a small portion to live on. The rest comes to us." "A small portion? I hope not too much. She can move to a small condo or assisted living. The less money she has, the sooner she qualifies for Medicaid." I stood behind a pillar, shaking. They were calculating, planning to take Grandma's assets before Grandpa was even cold in the ground. 2 days later, December 22nd, Dad went to Grandma's house. I was there helping her sort through Grandpa's things. She kept his favorite sweater, his old pocket watch, some tools from the workshop. "Mom, we need to talk about the house," Dad said, sitting at the kitchen table. "What about it, Richard?" "This house, and the estate. We need to settle Dad's estate. Under Oregon law, without a will, assets split evenly between spouse and children. You get 50%, I get 50%. Grandma poured tea with trembling hands. "What are you saying?" "Mom, don't play dumb. This house is worth about $350,000. Add bank accounts, retirement funds. It's around $400,000 total. You get $200,000, I get $200,000. Simple." "But this is my home, Richard. I've lived here 45 years. "I know, Mom, but you don't need a house this big. You're alone now. We'll sell it, split the money, and you can rent somewhere smaller. You'll still have $200,000 to live on. That's plenty." Grandma sank into her chair, face pale. I couldn't take it anymore. "Dad, what are you doing? Kicking Grandma out of her house?" "Emily, stop being dramatic. This is the law. The estate has to be divided." "Is there a will?" I asked Grandma. "Did you and Grandpa write one?" Grandma looked at me, then Dad, then back at me. "Yes," she said quietly. "But I haven't filed it." "Then file it!" I nearly shouted. "Emily, if there's a will, it needs to go through probate," Dad said. "Takes months. And if Dad left everything to Mom, fine. But I doubt it. Dad was fair. He'd think of his son." Grandma said nothing, just sat there staring at her tea. "You have 30 days to think about it, Mom." Dad stood up. "After that, we start the sale process. Merry Christmas." He left, leaving me and Grandma in silence. The New Year passed in tension. Grandma didn't come to our house for New Year's. My parents didn't invite her. I visited alone, bringing Chinese takeout. She looked thinner, hair longer because she hadn't gotten it cut. In February, Dad filed with a lawyer to start probate. He couldn't find Grandpa's will, and Grandma said she didn't know where it was. Maybe Dad destroyed it. Dad told Mom over the phone. I overheard while fixing their computer. Or never had one. Either way, we proceed with intestate succession. In March, the house went on the market. Grandma received notice to move out within 60 days of sale. A realtor came, took photos, planted a for sale sign in the yard. I helped Grandma pack. She barely spoke, just slowly placed 45 years of memories into U-Haul boxes. "Where will you go?" I asked. "I found a one-bedroom apartment in Gresham, $200 a month. I'll manage." $200 a month. Her Social Security was only $1,800. That left $600 for food, utilities, medication, everything else. "What about the $200,000 from selling the house?" "Your father said I'd only get $150,000 after hospital bills, estate taxes, and attorney fees. He said I should put it in a CD or annuity for income. At 3 to 4% annual interest, I'd get about $500 extra per month. Combined with Social Security, I'd be okay." But she wasn't okay. I could see it. In April, the house sold. A young tech worker couple paid $375,000 cash. Fast closing, no complications. My parents got $187,500, 50% after fees. They used it to pay off their mortgage and buy a new Tesla Model Y. Finally, debt-free, Mom posted on Facebook with a photo of the shiny Tesla. Dozens of likes and congratulatory comments. Nobody knew where the money came from. Grandma got $150,000 and moved to a one-bedroom apartment in Gresham, a sketchy area far from downtown. I helped her move. The apartment was dark and small, smelling faintly of mildew, but she tried to smile. "I'll be fine, honey. Just need time to adjust." My parents didn't help. Not one call, not one text. On Mother's Day, I asked Dad, "Are you taking Grandma to dinner?" "No," he said flatly. "Mom got 50% of Dad's estate. She doesn't need us anymore." "Are you serious?" "Emily, stop the drama. Mom's an adult. She can take care of herself. We've given her plenty." "You haven't given her anything. That was her and Grandpa's money." "Emily, it's legal inheritance. Dad was my father. I have rights to his estate." I couldn't believe it. I took Grandma to dinner alone. We went to Olive Garden. She loved the unlimited breadsticks. She laughed and thanked me, but I saw the sadness in her eyes. Summer passed. I was the only one who visited. My parents? Radio silence, like Grandma didn't exist. At Thanksgiving 2023, Grandma wasn't invited. I asked Mom why. "The house is packed, Emily. We've got your maternal relatives, your dad's siblings. We don't have room. But this is Grandma." "Emily, she can have Thanksgiving at her place, or you can invite her to yours." "I don't want her here." "Why? What did she do to you?" Mom looked me straight in the eye, voice cold. "She's poor, Emily. She has nothing left to give us. She's just a burden. And I don't want to remind the family of failure." I stood there stunned. "Failure? You're calling Grandma a failure?" "Lower your voice, Emily. Don't embarrass the family." I walked out, drove to Gresham, brought Grandma back to my apartment. We had Thanksgiving with pizza and Netflix. But I heard her crying in the bathroom when she thought I couldn't hear. Christmas was the same, not invited. I took her to see the Christmas lights at Pittock Mansion. She smiled and took photos, but I knew she was pretending. I was furious. I hated my parents, but I didn't know what to do. Chapter 4. The truth begins to surface. In January 2024, Grandma fell in her apartment. She called me, not Dad. I took her to the ER. Luckily just a sprain, no broken bones, but the doctor said she needed physical therapy. "Medicare will cover it," the doctor said, "but she'll need transportation to PT." I took on that job. 3 times a week, I drove from Portland to Gresham after work, picked her up for PT, then drove her back. My parents? Not one call to check on her. One day, while waiting for her PT, I flipped through an old magazine in the waiting room and stumbled on an article about estate planning and trust funds. I read out of curiosity. I learned that Grandpa could have set up a revocable living trust, a way to transfer assets without going through probate court. It's completely legal. And if he'd created a trust, all assets in it would go straight to the beneficiary, bypassing intestate succession entirely. I remembered Grandma's words. Maybe it's better that way. The next morning I asked her, "Grandma, did Grandpa set up a trust?" She was making coffee. Her body went rigid. "Why do you ask?" "Because I read about it, and I think there's something you're not telling me." Grandma sat down, looking at me for a long moment. Then she sighed. "Your grandfather did set up a trust, Emily, a revocable living trust, before he died." My heart raced. And in that trust, he left everything to me. Everything. The house, bank accounts, retirement accounts, life insurance, all in the trust. It matures 2 years after his death, and then everything officially transfers to my name. I went completely still. Which means your father has no rights to any of it. Not one penny. Your grandfather decided that years ago, after your father tried to convince him to loan money for an investment property and never paid it back. Dad did that? Yes, in 2017. Your father borrowed $50,000 from your grandfather, promising to repay within 2 years. He never did, said the investment failed. Your grandfather knew he was lying. After that, Grandpa went to a lawyer, set up the trust, made sure that if anything happened, I'd be protected. Then why didn't you tell Dad? Why did you let them take the money from selling the house? Because I didn't sell the house, Emily. The house wasn't part of your grandfather's estate. It was in the trust. But I sold it as if it were part of the estate to let them think they were getting their inheritance. I let them take the money. But why? Because I wanted them to show their true colors. I wanted to see how they'd treat me when they thought I had nothing. And they showed me, Emily. They showed me very clearly. I couldn't speak. My whole body was shaking. And when does the trust mature? December this year, exactly 2 years after your grandfather passed. Then I'll receive everything remaining in the trust, about $3.2 million. $3.2 million? Your grandfather invested wisely his entire life, Emily. He bought properties, stocks, bonds. He wasn't flashy rich, but he was very smart with money, and now it all comes to me. But you've been living in that terrible apartment, eating so little, I was waiting, Emily, waiting for the right moment. And that moment is coming. I realized she'd endured 2 years of humiliation, 2 years of abandonment, of struggle, all to test my parents, and they'd failed spectacularly. Does Dad know? No. They think they got everything. They think I'm poor and helpless. Then Grandma smiled, the first real smile I'd seen in 2 years. Cold, determined. But soon, they'll know the truth. In November 2024, 3 weeks before the trust matured, my parents received notice from a major downtown Portland law firm. The notice informed them that Susan Holmes was the sole beneficiary of the Lucas Holmes Trust, and that the entire $3.2 million estate would officially transfer to her on December 20th. I heard the screaming from my parents' house down the block. Impossible! That old woman deceived us! Mom called me, voice venomous. Your grandmother conned us. She's worth millions and pretended to be poor. Not millions, Mom, I replied coldly. Just $3.2 million, and it's her money, not yours. It's our money. Your grandfather was Richard's father. That estate should be shared with his son. Grandpa already decided, Mom. He left it to Grandma, completely legal. No, she manipulated him. He was sick, not thinking clearly. We're suing. And they did. In December 2024, my parents filed suit in Multnomah County Circuit Court, alleging that Grandma had used undue influence to convince Grandpa to put everything in the trust and disinherit Dad. They demanded the trust be invalidated and assets divided by intestate succession. They hired an expensive attorney, Todd Richardson, known for estate litigation. His fee was $500 an hour, but my parents didn't care. They were certain they'd win and reclaim what should have been theirs. Grandma said nothing. She just smiled and hired attorney James Chen, a lawyer specializing in elder law and estate planning who'd helped Grandpa create the trust back in 2019. The trial was set for January 15th, 2025, which brings us back to where we started. The courtroom at Multnomah County Courthouse was packed. My parents sat at the plaintiff's table with attorney Richardson, a tall man with silver hair and a confident demeanor. Grandma sat quietly at the defendant's table with attorney Chen. I sat in the gallery, heart pounding. Judge Catherine Morrison, the imposing black woman in her 60s, banged her gavel. Court is now in session. Case number CV 224-12847, Richard Holmes and Patricia Holmes versus Susan Holmes. Attorney Richardson stood, voice booming. Your Honor, this case is about cruel deception. My client, Richard Holmes, is the only son of the late Lucas Holmes. By all ethical and legal standards, he deserves to inherit a significant portion of his father's estate. Instead, Susan Holmes, a woman married to Lucas for 50 years, took advantage of her husband's declining health to manipulate him into creating a trust that completely disinherits his son. This is undue influence, Your Honor, and we have evidence. What evidence? The judge asked. First, Your Honor, Lucas Holmes created this trust in August 2019, right after being diagnosed with heart disease. His health was failing, his cognitive ability compromised. Second, the trust was created in secret, without Richard Holmes' participation. Third, Susan Holmes is the sole beneficiary, while the son, the natural heir, is completely excluded. These are clear signs of manipulation. Mom nodded vigorously, eyes full of hatred toward Grandma. The judge turned to Attorney Chen. Defense? Chen stood calmly. Your Honor, this isn't about undue influence. This is about a father who made a wise, deliberate decision to protect his wife from a greedy, abusive son. We have complete evidence proving that Lucas Holmes was fully competent when creating the trust, that his decision was voluntary and uncoerced, and most importantly, that Richard and Patricia Holmes had a history of abusing and attempting to steal from him. Objection, Richardson shouted. That's a baseless accusation. I will provide evidence, Your Honor, Chen said calmly. The judge banged her gavel. Objection overruled. Mr. Chen, please proceed. Chen opened his briefcase, pulling out a thick file. Your Honor, I present Evidence A, a copy of the trust document dated August 15, 2019, bearing Lucas Holmes' signature, notarized by a notary public who verified he was fully alert and uncoerced. He submitted the documents. The judge reviewed them. Evidence B, medical records from July 2019, showing that while Lucas Holmes had heart issues, doctors confirmed he had no cognitive decline, no dementia, no mental health issues affecting his decision-making capacity. Evidence C, statement from the attorney who helped create the trust, myself. I can testify that Lucas Holmes came to my office alone, without Susan present, and clearly stated his wishes, to leave everything to his wife because he didn't trust his son. Objection! Richardson jumped up. Hearsay! Your Honor, I'm a direct witness. This isn't hearsay, Chen said. Overruled. Continue, Mr. Chen. Chen nodded. Lucas Holmes told me, and I quote, my son borrowed $50,000 from me in 2017, promised to repay but never did. When I asked, he said the investment failed, but I know he lied. I saw him buy a new car, go on vacations. I don't want him to get a penny from me when I die. I want my wife protected. Dad's face turned crimson. He's lying! I paid that money back! Order! The judge banged her gavel. Mr. Holmes, control yourself. Chen continued coldly. Evidence D, bank records showing Richard Holmes received a $50,000 transfer from Lucas Holmes on March 12, 2017. There's no record of repayment. Instead, 3 months later, Richard and Patricia purchased a BMW 5 Series for $55,000. Mom's jaw dropped. Evidence E, text messages between Richard and Patricia from October 2019. Chen held up a stack of printed texts. May I read some excerpts? The judge nodded. Chen read steadily. Patricia to Richard, October 20th, 2019. Does your dad have a savings passbook somewhere? We should know in case something happens. Richard replies, I'll look, probably in the workshop cabinet. Patricia, can't you just take it, just to check? Richard, no, Dad would notice, but when he's sick, we'll have our chance. The courtroom fell silent. Chen continued. November 5th, 2019, Patricia writes, if your dad dies, can we get power of attorney for your mom to control the assets? Richard, maybe, but Mom's stubborn. We might need to wait until they're both gone. My parents looked like statues. And finally, Your Honor, November 15th, 2022, while Lucas Holmes was in ICU after his stroke, Patricia texted Richard, we need a DNR form. The sooner he passes, the less medical debt, and we'll get the house. Richard replied, I'll talk to Mom. If she won't sign, I'll find another way. I felt sick. I knew they were terrible, but not this terrible. Evidence F. Chen pulled out a USB drive. Video surveillance from Providence Portland Hospital, November 25th, 2022. May I play it? The courtroom screen lit up. The video showed my parents in the hospital hallway outside ICU. There was audio. Mom, how long do you think he has? Dad, doctor said maybe days, maybe weeks. Too long. Every day is $10,000. Mom, can't we do something? You're next of kin. Dad, no. Mom has medical power of attorney. She has to agree. Mom, then convince her. Tell her to let him go peacefully. For his sake. Blah, blah. They laughed. The video stopped. The courtroom was dead silent. Chen's voice cut like a knife. Your Honor, this isn't about undue influence. This is about a father who saw his son's true nature and decided to protect the woman he loved. Lucas Holmes created the trust legally, voluntarily, and competently. And for the past 2 years, Richard and Patricia Holmes have proven his decision was right by abandoning Susan Holmes, cutting her off, and treating her like garbage when they thought she had nothing left. We asked the court to dismiss this lawsuit entirely. Furthermore, we're considering countersuing for elder abuse and emotional distress. Judge Morrison looked at my parents, eyes ice cold. Mr. and Mrs. Holmes, I've reviewed all the evidence. I've heard testimony and read the medical records. I conclude that Lucas Holmes was fully competent when creating the trust. There was no undue influence, and the trust was executed properly under law. She banged the gavel hard. The lawsuit is dismissed. The trust is valid. Susan Holmes is the sole beneficiary. Case closed. No! Mom screamed. You can't do this! Are you being paid off? Court security immediately moved forward. No way! Dad yelled. We'll appeal! Mr. Holmes, the judge cut him off, voice like ice. If you don't shut up immediately, I'll charge you with contempt of court. And with what I've heard today, I'd be delighted to do so. Dad went silent, but his eyes burned with rage. The judge turned to Grandma. Mrs. Holmes, I'm deeply sorry for what you've endured. The law is on your side. The assets are yours, legally and justly. Grandma stood for the first time during the hearing. Thank you, Your Honor, but I didn't do this for money. I did this because I wanted them to know that love can't be bought with assets, and greed will never defeat integrity. She turned to face my parents, voice calm but steel hard. Richard, you're my son, and I loved you from the day you were born, but I couldn't let you treat me like trash and still be rewarded. Your father saw it years ago, and now you've proven to the whole world that he was right. I don't owe my family anything, but I owe myself everything. Dignity, respect, and the life my husband wanted me to have. Grandma turned and walked out of the courtroom, Attorney Chen following. I stood up, looked at my parents. They sat there, faces ashen like empty shells, and I walked out after Grandma, not looking back. Outside in the courthouse hallway, Portland's winter sun streamed through the tall glass windows. Grandma stood there, breathing deeply, like she was releasing a weight she'd carried for 2 years. I ran to hug her. You did it. No, Emily. She stroked my hair. We did it. Without you, I don't know if I would have survived. Attorney Chen smiled. Mrs. Holmes, congratulations. The trust will complete its transfer within 30 days. You'll receive everything. Thank you, Mr. Chen. You helped my husband protect us. We walked out of the courthouse. Snow began to fall, small, gentle flakes like kisses from heaven. What will you do now? I asked. First, she said, smiling, I'm moving out of that apartment. I'm buying a small house with a garden close to you. I want to grow roses like your grandfather and I used to. Second, I'm traveling. We always wanted to see Europe but never had the money, or rather, we didn't want your father knowing we had money. Now I'm free. Third, she took my hand. I'm setting up a trust fund for you. For grad school if you want it, or to buy a house, or whatever you need. You deserve it. Grandma, you don't have to... You deserve it, Emily. You stayed with me when no one else did. You showed me that real family isn't about blood. It's about who stays when things are hardest. We had dinner at a nice Italian restaurant. Not Olive Garden this time, but somewhere truly elegant. Grandma ordered wine. We raised our glasses. To Grandpa Lucas, she said, the man who taught me that true love means protecting those you love, even after you're gone. And to you, I said, the strongest woman I know. We clinked glasses, and for the first time in 2 years, I saw my grandmother truly happy. 2 weeks later, my parents called. I didn't answer. They left voicemails. Emily, it's Dad. I know things are complicated, but we're still family. You shouldn't cut off your parents because of that woman. That woman? I listened to the voicemail in disbelief. Grandma, who raised Dad, who endured everything from him, was still just that woman to them. I didn't call back. A month later, I got an email from Mom. Subject: Please read. Important. Content. Emily, I know you're angry, but you need to understand we're victims too. Your grandmother deceived us, made us look like bad people. We just wanted what should have been ours. That's not a crime. You need to forgive us and come home. I read it, then deleted it. No apology to Grandma, no remorse for how they treated her. Just self-pity and blame-shifting. That's when I knew they'd never change. Now, in April 2025, 3 months after the trial, Grandma lives in a charming cottage in Lake Oswego with a lake view and a small garden where she grows roses and tomatoes. I visit every week. We drink tea, cook together, and tell stories about Grandpa. She's booked a European trip for June: Paris, Rome, Venice. For your grandfather, she says. He always wanted to go. I accepted a vice principal position at a new school with higher pay. Grandma offered to pay off my student loans, but I declined. I want to do it myself, Grandma, but thank you. My parents? I heard they're trying to sell the Tesla to pay attorney fees, $75,000 for a lawsuit they lost spectacularly. They still have their mortgage, still have credit card debt. And now they've also lost their daughter. They sent a card on my birthday. I didn't open it. I returned it with one line: family isn't about blood. It's about who stands by you when it matters. If you've watched this video to the end, let me know. Do you think I was right to cut off my parents, or should I give them a second chance? Leave a comment below and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories about family, justice, and life lessons. Because for me, the biggest lesson from those 2 years is this: real family isn't defined by DNA. It's defined by loyalty, love, and respect. And sometimes the best family you can have is the one you choose, not the one you're born into. My grandmother taught me that, and I'll never forget it. Question for you: if you were Emily, what would you do? Forgive or hold your ground? Share your thoughts so I know if anyone out there agrees with you.